Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Lords of Two Continents, Asian and African Elephants. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leaders, Aditya Panda and Richard de Gouveia. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. Over to you, Aditya.
Thank you, Rob. Hello, everyone. Great to have everybody back on another webinar with Richard and I, arguing and comparing African and Indian wildlife. This time we have elephants, and I think elephants are everybody's favorite creatures. What do you think, Richard?
I think it's definitely my spirit animal, and I'm excited to learn a bit more about the Asian elephants and the differences between the two. And you know that there's something that's so big and monumental on any safari. There's so much to discuss about them. So let's dive into it and start with the beginning. And basically, elephants started, what, 60 million years ago? They started as this really big group called Proboscidea. And what's amazing is for the first 30 million years of their evolution, only two groups actually evolved. And these groups were of varying sizes through the evolution, through the 60 million years. Not all of them were the size of African elephants or woolly mammoths or Asian elephants, all these things that we know better. But there were some as small as foxes that didn't have trunks attached to them. And so this very interesting evolution started to move along. The real driving force behind this evolution, and they started in Africa, was the Afro-Arabic plate slamming into Eurasia and then creating land bridges all the way around, allowing them to spread across the planet and move around through North America, Asia, Europe, and obviously through the whole of Africa. And because of all of this movement, obviously, as you go through different places, you see different things. And the main differences are put out in this. But obviously, Eddie, what's cool about the African elephant is much bigger than the Indian elephant or Asian elephant. What do you have to say? What's your retort on size mattering?
Well, can't deny that. The African elephant is certainly bigger, but you have to agree the Asian elephant is a lot more beautiful as an animal. And it is the fact that among the physical differences between the two, one is that the Asian elephant actually has smoother skin.
Yeah, no doubt. I can't doubt that. But like I said, size does make a difference. And the reason is for ours having all this wrinkled skin is it's the cooling mechanism. We obviously in India, you guys have, and Asia, you have hot temperatures, but out here, there's not a lot of cover for these guys. So this is where they have greater surface area, ability to cool themselves down when they're dust bathing. And then the bigger ears is a much overstated difference between the two things. And what the elephants in Africa use the ears for is a thermoregulator. It's like a big radiator that they use to cool their blood down by about 10 degrees centigrade within 12 minutes, doing the whole body in about 20 minutes. That's how much blood is pumped through those ears. Why wouldn't yours have as big ears? I mean, it's quite a big difference, don't you think?
It is a big difference. India and everywhere else that Asian elephants are found, these areas do have very high temperatures and high humidity, but
Hi there, Rob. Can you hear me now?
Richard, I've got you.
All right. I'm gonna try and put my camera back on. There we go. I think we've lost Addy. All right, so you can hear me. I'm going to carry on with the presentation as we're going. Hopefully Aditya can join us, and hopefully he can then fill in some wonderful stories about these elephants as we go along. But African elephants, because of the incredible diversity and as they've gone through, have developed this real herd mentality. And you can have herds. Normal herd size will be anything between sort of 5 and 10 individuals up to 20 individuals. And then in the winter time, as things dry up, as food sources become less and water sources become limited, you'll have distant family members starting to stretch out and come together, and herds can push anywhere between 200 and 300 elephant, which is quite fascinating when you consider the size of these animals. I mean, a big elephant like this is a big male here. You can see his size versus the female walking in front of him. And these guys will follow these herds, but the social structures are very different, because what ends up happening is in this herd, these highly emotional creatures stick around, and at about 14, 15 years old, the young bulls are moved out. They're told, listen, guys, you're not allowed sticking around with your family because you may mate with your family, and that inbreeding is no good. So the matriarch, who's the oldest and wisest female, will then come back and she will push that male out. This is distressing for this young guy. I mean, you can imagine you've spent the first 14, 15 years with your mom and your sister and your aunts and your cousins and everything, and then suddenly they all tell you, hey, push off, buddy, you're not welcome here anymore. That's a distressing thing. But what they will do is they'll actually link up with other male elephants, big bulls, that will become like a father figure to them. He'll teach them how to be a man and what to do in different situations, how to act around the ladies, and then control his hormone levels so that he doesn't go out of balance, doesn't produce too much testosterone, making him a little bit more manageable and causing less trouble. Now, as an animal, these guys have the longest gestation period of any large mammal, and have the ability to have twins. So these were two twins that I was very, very fortunate to see. And the maternal care that comes from them, from the mother, is absolutely spectacular. They really do take good care of the youngsters. But the gestation period is 22 months. So for all of you ladies that have carried a baby before, can you imagine the extra time it would take to keep that baby inside? Baby coming out at about 220 pounds. And then because of where we are and the animals and everything that are in the area, what ends up happening is there are a lot of different types of, there's Aditya. There's a lot of different types of ticks and insects out here. So their blood flow actually doesn't go into their skin. And what happens is they have rather used their ears for that cooling, but they're trying to lower the tick levels that are going on in their bodies. So Addy, are you back? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having bandwidth issues and an unstable connection,
Nope.
but I'm back now.
So tell me a bit about the ears, Addy. I mean, we were on these regulators, this temperature regulator. How does it work with the Asian elephants?
Well, it works pretty much the same way as it does with African elephants, but obviously because the Asian elephant has smaller ears, the temperature difference wouldn't be that drastic. 10 degrees in 12 minutes. Why would anybody need an air conditioner? But yeah, so, the Asian elephant's habitat is mostly in moist deciduous forest and semi-evergreen and evergreen forests. So they always have good canopy that keeps them off direct sunlight. I couldn't imagine Asian elephants surviving the kind of temperatures and direct sunlight that African elephants do in places like Namibia especially. So yeah, I think the Asian elephant has smaller ears because it never needed bigger ears.
And then tell me, I mean, we were talking about parasites, and I was saying how a lot of the blood vessels in our African elephants lie much very far under the skin layer, which can be up to an inch thick. Now, what's happening here with the dust bathing? What are they doing?
Well, these elephants, as a matter of routine, after they have a bath, which they must have, almost every day, especially in hot weather. Now, this herd of elephants has just had a good time at the pool in the afternoon in a water hole. And after that, they have a dust bath to sort of cake themselves with mud. And that helps them keep ticks and flies and other parasites away. And, when you're a pachyderm, you have a thick skin, but you do not have fur to protect you from biting and, blood-sucking insects. So it makes you have your veins quite deep under your skin.
And then what we have on the African elephants is this really cool two-lipped trunk. Now the trunk is obviously this wonderful adaptation of a nose that can reach out and pull down branches. It's got ultimate dexterity. Their eyes actually focus down so that they can see what they're doing. But these two little lips on the African elephant, they use them beautifully to pick up certain things, move sticks out of the way, all the rest of it. But yours only has one. What do you reckon the reason for that difference is?
Well, even with one, tip on the at the end of the trunk, the Asian elephant can still pick up something as small and fine as a needle from the ground. And it's quite amazing how elephants innovate. Their tool use capabilities rival only that of primates. And it's quite interesting how they use tools. In fact, if while we were still on the subject of elephants, going through their beauty routine, bathing and dust bathing, they also clean between their toes with a little stick after they're done bathing. I've seen that quite a lot. They pick up a little twig, break it to the perfect size, and then they meticulously clean between their toes, giving themselves a nice pedicure. So it's quite an amazing tool, that trunk.
Well, like you said, your elephant's obviously prettier, so they need to keep their nails clean. We're just a little bit dirtier down here in Africa and like to rough it a little bit more. But tell us a bit about where your Asian elephants, what they eat, and we can start touching on how that impacts their herds and how does that work with the Asian elephants.
Well, they have a wide range of grasses and leaves, and of course bark and fruit that they eat. It's all very seasonal, actually. Like this elephant here with her calf is feeding right next to a reservoir, and this picture was taken in the middle of summer when the water recedes a little bit, and you have this lovely soft grass that grows on the banks, which elephants just love. And summer being a pinch period when it comes to finding forage and water, you have large numbers of elephants congregating at places like these. Multiple herds congregate and take advantage of the water and this soft grass. That apart, since a lot of elephant habitat in South and Southeast Asia has a lot of bamboo growing, bamboo figures very high on the list of elephant menu. And of course, they do get into water and eat a lot of aquatic plants as well. And during the summer season, when a lot of our trees come into fruit, for example, mangoes, you'll have elephants leaving the forests and going out to farmland and the edges of villages to feed on mango. And similarly, during the autumn season, they eat a lot of paddy and things like sugarcane, which obviously causes a lot of conflict, but we can always talk about that later. And yes, they do eat bark and things like that when in a pinch period.
That's fascinating. The bamboo for me is really interesting, and I want you to touch on that in a little bit, because bamboo contains cyanide. So elephants have this really broad diet, and African elephants have an incredibly broad diet, very seasonal again, just like yours, Aditya. And fruit, when fruit's available, our summer period is when our wet season is, so fruits are generally available then. One of the trees they love is a marula tree, and everyone knows, or most people know, the amarula, which is a cream liqueur that we get here in Southern Africa, made from these fruits. It's family of the mango too, so we're back to mangoes again. So clearly there's something about elephants and mangoes. But it's a small fruit that has quite a large pip inside it, but huge amount of vitamin C. And these guys will literally feed on them thousands, put them in. And there's a myth that they get drunk off of these fruit. Unfortunately, it's not the truth. There is no proof that they do get intoxicated by it, because the fact that they literally are eating fresh fruit. Things don't have time to ferment. And elephant bulls will set up temporary territories around these areas because they know that the females will come in towards these marulas, and it's a good way to not have to travel large distances to find females, rather choose a good food source and they'll come to you. Now, with this excess intake of this fruit and the vitamin C, it gives them a little bit of diarrhea. Things start moving fast through their system. So they need to counteract that. So they find a tree with high tannins, tannins like what's in red wine, to slow the system down, because a tannin is a poison that binds the enzyme and slows the absorption rate. So it slows the system down. Now, that being said, Aditya, how do they cope with that cyanide that's going into their body, the Asian elephants?
That's a good question, Richard. Probably they choose, they have favored species of bamboo that they eat, which probably do not give them that problem, but that's something I really need to look up, to be honest. And another interesting thing about elephants and fruit, Richard, is the role that elephants play in the dispersal of seeds. They eat so many fruit, and especially during the summer season. You see, in India, our hot, dry season is followed by the monsoons, and during that period when fruits have ripened and they're just waiting for something to eat it, so that the seed, typically, say mango again, elephants eat these fruit, and they travel great distances, of course. And what comes out of the other end in their dung is, the seed bereft of the skin, and it's literally in a pot of fertilizer, and waiting for the first rains. And as elephants move, they move around seeds like this, and that's one of the many roles that they play as the gardeners of the forest, as we like to call them.
So tell me, with the African elephant, these guys, I've chosen this image because of the fact that you can actually see in the back over here the teeth, and these molars are used for crushing and moving things, and the dexterity in that mouth, and with that tongue they're able to strip bark off of branches that are going through like a typewriter, obviously crack open the fruit and get to the nutritious part before swallowing. And through time, these teeth are worn down, and our elephants go through 6 sets of teeth, and eventually will starve to death at the end of it. Do yours suffer the same horrific fate?
Yes, unfortunately, ours suffer the same fate too, and they also go through 6 sets of teeth. So that's something that works very similarly between the two species.
Yeah, the digestive systems of these guys, as much as they eat so many different things, move so quickly. Being hindgut fermenters that push their food through really fast. I think for an African elephant, it's on average about 4 hours from entry to exit. So not a lot of time to grab what you need out of those things. So when it comes through, that poop is really quite raw and ready for good composting.
How much how much vegetation does an African elephant have to eat in a day, roughly, in terms of pounds?
Yeah, it's about 200 kilograms, so about 440 pounds of food a day for a big adult elephant. But
Right.
this all depends on time of the year, grass, weather versus leaves versus fruit, etc. And yours?
Well, a little less, between 300 to 400 pounds a day. Again, depending upon the size of the elephant, of course.
Yeah. And then, but I mean, obviously, then food is going to be very much allocated to where you are. With where most of our southern African safaris go, you have a lot of grassland. So we've got these beautiful green grasses and thick savanna which come along, and when summer comes in, obviously these savanna areas are then utilized by the elephants, and they play a keystone role out here where they actually do they kill 3 to 4 trees a day by pushing them over or feeding them to death. That they play a role in balancing out the system so that not too many trees grow, so that there's balance between trees and grasses. And this has a major impact, especially when elephant numbers are too high, because then you're obviously clearing too much vegetation, or when it's too low, and then you get to the point of too many trees coming up. Is there any specific role like that for you guys?
Yes, they do play similar roles. That example that you gave of how they maintain grasslands by literally preventing succession from happening. That's quite interesting. They do that here as well, and in thick forest. Most of Asian elephant habitat is in thick forest, and in thick forest they play the role of a bulldozer that while they walk through jungles, while they move through forests, they keep clearing those paths which are then used by so many other animals. A lot of game trails are actually built by elephants. In fact, it is a matter of fact that a lot of India's modern day highways all were originally elephant paths.
Wow.
People laid roads along elephant paths, which eventually, over time, the trunk roads became highways. So, yeah, they are the engineers, the gardeners of the forest, and that's something really amazing.
That's awesome. Now, with our stuff here, we have 2 different types of elephants in Africa. The map on the left is the past distribution. You can see the forest elephant, which is a separate species. They've been speciated very recently. In the middle, around Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, that sort of area, and up to Gabon, Sierra Leone, up the west coast. And then the African elephant was pretty much everywhere besides the greatest parts of the Sahara Desert. But now you look at the conservation area and where they still live, you can see how much this has been impacted. Now, tell me how your populations have been impacted on your side, Eddie.
Very similarly, Richard, if you can switch over to the other map, you'll notice that, again, the light pink, the areas in light pink show you the past distribution of Asian elephants, and the areas in dark pink show us the present populations of Asian elephants. And again, the vast majority of them are confined to protected areas or areas where forest habitats have been preserved in in other ways. They might not necessarily be national parks or wildlife sanctuaries. But yes, there's been a drastic decrease in the distribution of Asian elephants. If we can go back to the slide with evolution, I'd like to just point out the 4 subspecies of Asian elephant that exist today.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. So in India, we only have the Indian elephant, the only subspecies that exists here. There are 4 subspecies that are recognized. There's the Sri Lankan elephant, the Sumatran elephant, the Indian elephant, of course, and the Borneo elephant, which is sometimes called the pygmy elephant. Among the 4 subspecies, this Sri Lankan elephant is considered the largest, and it's an isolated population living on the island of Sri Lanka, of course. So yeah, to get back to habitat, that's how the subspecies are distributed, and across South and Southeast Asia, their habitat types primarily are in moist deciduous forests, which often have large grassland areas as well, and green and semi-evergreen forests.
It's quite contrasty to Africa, because the African elephant, or the savanna elephant, has such a diverse range of environments, from lush green areas through forests all the way to deserts. And this is one of my favorite sites that I've had of things, is a desert elephant, watching elephants walking over dunes. I mean, it's just the craziest thing to think that an elephant, where I have worked before, needs to drink every day, is now going 7 days without water.
Wow.
And then we have another species which has been obviously speciated off from the savanna elephant, is the forest elephant. And this might lean back towards what we were talking about with the with your elephants eating the bamboo. This is a what we call a bai, which is an opening in the forest, in dense rainforest jungle, where all these animals come through, and these guys will actually come in and mine clays and silts to feed on, because of some of the toxic plants that they eat. So the clays will actually absorb the toxins, removing them, allowing them to get through. So do yours eat any clays like that, Eddie?
They do spend a lot of time at salt licks. In some places there are artificial salt licks, but in a lot of places they have natural salt licks, which are basically clay areas close to water bodies, and they do eat a significant amount of clay.
Amazing. So that would now start to make some sense. But
yes,
our biggest thing now with all of this is the conservation and then domestication. Now, for us, domestication here, I've got 2 images of a little boy. There's a handful of places here in South Africa where you can, and in Africa, where you can go pet African elephants, and they've been taught to do certain things. Never been domesticated to a working animal though. They've tried, but it really didn't work out that well. Please explain to me how the domestication goes in India and Asia, and how this fits in with your lifestyles.
Well, from the earliest records of human civilization in India, which is the Indus Valley civilization, and which is also one of the earliest known human civilizations in the world. There are paintings and murals that show domesticated elephants, working elephants. So you can say that elephants have been domesticated in Asia since the dawn of human civilization here. Of course, in the past, they had many working uses. Most of them were wild caught, which is in fact one of the reasons for their decline from a lot of former range, especially in central India. They were used as war animals, they were used as working animals, they were used for hunting and things like that. And over the years, of course, those uses have become outdated. You don't use elephant cavalries anymore in battle, and even their use as working animals has reduced with the advent of tractors and bulldozers and things like that. So, but there are still a large number of elephants under private ownership in Asia. In Southeast Asia, they continue to be used for a lot of purposes, that can be considered controversial and abusive. But India has been following a system of phasing out the private ownership of elephants over the years. Now, of course, you will still have a few elephants under private ownership because they're such long-lived creatures. They live as long as we do, and somebody might have obtained a license 60 years ago and still owns the elephant. But a lot of working elephants and elephants that were abused under private ownership have been rescued by the forest department, and they either live in sanctuaries or they are used by the forest department as working animals. Now, with the forest department, these elephants serve a very, very important role in conservation, because a lot of areas in our wildlife sanctuaries and national parks cannot be accessed by on foot or by four-wheel drive vehicles. In the African savanna, you can go for management purposes or protection purposes. You can go off-road and literally drive anywhere. But here in India, like this particular elephant here, we use elephants extensively for things like tiger monitoring, for example, or if you need to tranquilize a tiger, he might not necessarily be right next to a road or to an area where you have vehicular access. So you'll send an elephant deep into the forest in very difficult terrain to get very close to the tiger, and tigers don't seem to mind them in areas where they're used to them. And that's the safest way to get close and tranquilize the animal or observe it for whatever reason you want to observe it. That apart, elephant patrols are also very useful. A forest guard on foot patrolling his beat becomes a lot more effective if he has elephant backup in that area when taking on poachers or intruders of other kinds. In some areas, such as Kaziranga National Park, where we visit, it is possible to go out on some of the park elephants on elephant-backed safaris early in the morning, looking for rhinos and other wildlife in the grasslands there. And these elephants that work with the forest department are very well looked after. They are no longer wild caught, and they are looked after and cared for like we'd look after and care for horses. So I think this is the right balance finally, where the uses of the elephant as a domestic animal is balanced very well with responsible ownership and caring for it without it actually getting abusive.
Yeah. No, for us the conservation is quite different. Yours pushes a lot towards getting away from the private ownership. We're unfortunately in the position where African elephant numbers are really low. They've been poached out in big ways, and then habitat destruction has been a huge problem too. And now what you're getting is these overpopulation of reserves. So even like a country like Botswana has 300 to 400,000 elephants in it, which is too much for their environment. It's great that they've got a great number, but it's too much for that environment. So our conservation is now about trying to find ways to create corridors. So the WWF's involved in a project called CASA out here in Botswana to try create a corridor to move elephants out of Botswana, not physically move them, but just create the corridor. They'll move themselves to get to Angola and start repopulating parks that were, completely shut out of their livestock, their animals and their wild animals during a very long extended bush war that went on there. And then the other thing is the poaching of these animals is a huge problem, because 30 elephants a day are poached throughout Africa. Ivory, which you can see up at the top here, this mountain of ivory. Ivory is still considered as white gold. It funds wars, it funds coups, it funds all sorts of crazy things, and people just use it ornamentally. It doesn't even have an aphrodisiac value or anything like that, which I find fascinating, that it's still so needed, or people still have such a want to get a hold of this stuff. There were big ivory stores because of the overpopulation of elephant in reserves. Controversial culling was taking place in these places, where an entire herd would be wiped out from the biggest to the smallest elephant within like 30 seconds. Group of hunters, boom, done. And this had a major impact on many different things, just like their emotive side. Like we've been saying, they're highly emotional creatures. They react really badly to this. Any youngsters that got away or something have these deep entrenched wounds. But we also have an issue of elephants crossing over into farmlands. There's a lot of projects underway to try and stop them getting in, like planting chili plants around the edges of crops, because they can smell the heat or that spiciness of the chilies and move off. Or planting or having beehives around also makes a big difference. So these are the ways that they would try to limit that human-animal conflict. How's it done in India, Aditya?
Yeah, it's we've got very similar problems. Poaching is an issue, of course, but since only bull Asian elephants have tusks, unlike African elephants where both sexes have tusks, there's a lot of targeted poaching of bull elephants, which really messes up the sex ratio in a lot of places. And that apart, there is also a lot of elephant deaths as a result of electrocution, where poachers might lay up electrified snares hooked to a high voltage overhead line to poach things like wild pigs, or even deliberately to poach elephants. And that apart, we have tremendous amounts of habitat destruction and habitat loss. And like you see in this picture, what we call linear infrastructure that really fragments habitats and isolates populations. Here you see a road that goes through former, or rather degraded, elephant habitat. If you notice, the plants are not really plants that elephants would eat. These are cashew plants. And here's a bull elephant just wanting to get from A to B, and that itself is causing massive traffic jams on either side, bringing both human life and elephant life into risk. And of course, as habitats get fragmented, and elephants, as both with African and Asian elephants need to migrate. They need to move from place to place. They have patterns, they have routes that they need to follow. And they'll do that. The driving force behind those migrations is very strong. So, no matter what comes up in the way, the herd will follow its matriarch, and the matriarch has sort of legacy knowledge of these routes to get to places in different seasons that have water, that have food. And a lot of times they're now coming across agriculture like this herd here. And that is really intensifying human-elephant conflict. It's getting communities to go against the conservation of elephants, despite the fact that the elephant is worshipped in India. And we are also trying things like electric fences, chili fences, beehive fences, trenches, all of that. But what we've noticed here in India, Richard, is that elephants are so smart and so desperate to get from wherever to wherever they want to, that they always figure these things out. So it's a constant battle of remaining one step ahead of them, because no matter what you put across, they figured out how to break down electric fences. They know the poles do not carry a current. They know if they throw a log at the fence, it'll not harm them, and they can just jump right over. They don't care about crackers anymore in many areas. So all of these are really just knee-jerk measures, or treating the symptoms instead of treating the actual cause of the problem, which is habitat loss and fragmentation. So there you have to get back to corridors and keeping habitat intact in order to get over these problems in the long run.
Totally. So I think let's share a nice, outstanding moment. I'm going to play a video for you guys of a recent trip that I did to Mashatu, one of the reserves we used to visit, and hopefully we'll get back to after the pandemic is over. But basically what happened was we had an elephant calf or adolescent that had died the day we arrived, and we watched for the next 4 nights as this carcass was devoured, from lions through hyenas and jackals and vultures, all the way through to the true emotional feeling that elephants have, where they actually come back and they mourn their dead. And on the last day, once everything had finished, a herd, which I think is the natal herd of that youngster, pulled in, started talking, moved all the predators off, moved all the vultures away, started picking up the bones, started rumbling and trumpeting. And eventually at one point, and you'll see the mother, or what I think is the mother, was separated. She sat over the carcass, and the rest of the elephants formed a ring around them, which was quite incredible to watch. So I'll let you watch the video, and then Addy can take it from there. Watch him smelling the jaw. Something went fish out there. No, it only loaded half of the video. Terribly sorry. But yeah, Eddie, tell me a cool sighting that you've had.
Well, I've had a few. I can think of two stories that that really left their mark. One of them scared the hell out of me. I don't think I've ever been so scared since that one. And the other was, extremely thrilling. So thrilling, it's very difficult to describe. So the first story happened in Corbett Tiger Reserve in northern India, where many years ago, when I was far less experienced, I went on elephant back. It's possible to go on 2-hour-long elephant back safaris there, and we went out in the late afternoon. There were 3 or 4 elephants that went out on safari that afternoon, and 2 of them went looking for a tiger into the forest, while the third one, which was us, found a bull elephant in the forest that we decided to trail, and he led us to this massive sort of reservoir area where it was summer, and there were large congregations of elephants that were by the water feeding around in the grass. And this bull elephant, while we were following him, we could only see his rear end. So we watched him go into the water. He had a good time there. He took his time bathing, then got out and took a mud bath and a dust bath. And then after the dust bath, as the elephant decided to turn away from the water and walk back, I noticed that the elephant was in a state of mast. And that's not a state in which you want to meet a bull elephant in. It's a periodic testosterone high that they go through, and they have fluids oozing out of their temples, and they're in a terrible mood at that time. And the elephant we were riding on was a female elephant that had been rescued from Delhi. So she was a city girl of sorts, in that she liked being in the forest, but she was probably not in the physical shape that's needed to move quickly enough away from a bull elephant in must. And as we had a good 100-200 yards between us, and as we decided to turn away from the bull elephant and avoid attention and head back towards the camp, we noticed that the bull cautiously but very determinedly following us from a distance. And gradually that distance began to decrease, and at one point our elephant and the mahout were really huffing and puffing and gasping for breath, and our elephant began to pick up speed. And when our elephant began to pick up speed, we saw that the bull began to keep up. He was a massive bull, so he could easily keep up. And then things got really scary. The distance really began to narrow, and it came to a point where I had to decide whether to continue on the back of this elephant, because I was sitting in the back, or bail out. And fortunately, at that very crucial moment, a jeep that was somewhere around noticed all this and just raced right in between us and the bull, which slowed him down and gave us the time to get out of there. I don't think I've ever been that scared in my life.
That's crazy.
And the second incident.
Okay.
Yeah, the second incident was at a place called the Simlipal Tiger Reserve, which is close to where I live, where I took this picture of a bull elephant with that in that beautiful grassland with the blue background. In the remotest part of that reserve is a camp, an anti-poaching camp manned by one man who spent probably 20 years manning that camp. And I had the opportunity to spend a week with him there. And this camp is right next to a grassland with a salt lake, where every evening a herd of elephants, a lot of sambar and spotted deer come down, and they spend the entire night there. And this person, he had gotten that herd of elephants into the habit of eating, salt, balls of salt that he'd throw at them to keep them occupied, outside the trench, while he had to run out and answer the call of nature in the open grassland. So because that camp didn't have a functioning toilet. So at about 8 o'clock, it was a really cold January evening. He gives me this, a bunch of salt and says that, I need to go to the, I need to go out, and please keep the elephants occupied while I'm away. So I did what I was told, because I was terrified the man might be caught in the dark by a stray elephant. So just to prevent the elephants from going anywhere else, I kept them busy with salt. And while all of this was happening, we heard a tiger call from very close, maybe half a kilometer away. Here you are with this amazing interaction with a herd of wild elephants, absolutely wild elephants, and enjoying their company. And there you hear a tiger roaring, and it was amazing to see how the elephants reacted to that. They had small calves, and tigers do go after elephant calves, and they all bunched together really tight, and suddenly they were no longer interested in salt. And I was a very relieved man when the forest guard came back.
I'm sure you were. That sounds like you might have needed. I just got this image of that whole situation, throwing balls while you call it, answering the call of nature. Amazing stuff. Rob, do you have any questions for us? I'm sure there's some questions from the guests that are watching.
Thank you, Richard. Absolutely. We do have some questions. And before I ask the first one, I'd like to remind everyone that you can submit any questions that you do have via the question field in your control panel. So last year, there was some mass elephant deaths in Botswana, over 300. Do you guys know what the cause of that was?
So there's a lot of back and forth on this. The one official piece that I read on it was that it was a cyanobacteria that had attacked the brains, but it was dodgy that only 300 died and no other animals died and everything. There's a lot of gray area in this, a lot of debate, a lot of conspiracy. So I'm not going to bring the conspiracy into it, but that's the basic breakdown. Is that they said that there was something that had actually attacked the brains and caused a neurological dysfunction, causing them to go round in circles and then plow face first into the ground.
It's terrible.
Wow. So what are the differences between the savanna and the forest African elephants?
So the forest elephants are slightly smaller than the savanna elephants, and they've also got more oval-shaped ears, where African elephants, the ears actually look like Africa. So I'll just open this up and you can see it almost looks like the African continent, the ears. The tusks of a forest elephant are straighter and often point straight down like this. And obviously habitat is vastly different and diet is different, and there's skeletal and structural skull differences that are made up of it. But it was only a recent full, this is one species, that's the other, that they speciated the two.
Is the white skin pigmentation something that just the forest elephants have, or is that just a variation of coloring?
No, so that wasn't a pigmentation at all. That picture there, this is the clays I was referring to. So when they go into these byes, the colors of the clays go anything from red to greenish to yellow to brown. And as they mud bathe and dust bathe and move through these things, as they dry, they will take on the color of that dust. Their color is very similar to the African elephant.
Great, thanks for clearing that up.
Okay.
Now, are the Asian elephants around water more than African elephants?
Well, they do have more access to water, and again, it's a seasonal thing. In the summer, they're going to spend more time around water. In the cooler part of the year, they don't need to be around water as much, but they must drink about 80 to 100 liters of water every day. And they must bathe at least once a day, ideally. So yes, compared to say elephants in Namibia in the desert, they are a lot more around water.
Totally.
So in India, are there elephant sanctuaries where some of the elephants can be taken out of private possession in case there's abuses?
Yes, there is one. There is one very close to Agra, where the Taj Mahal is, where a large number of formerly working elephants are kept in a sanctuary. And a lot of these former working elephants under private ownership, as I was mentioning earlier, are also owned by the Forest Department. Under the Forest Department's ownership, they're looked after really well, and they have a very fixed sort of working schedule. They're not overworked. These elephants, the ones that you see us riding, for example, work about 2 hours a day. That's it. And this is what they get after their morning shift. They get some spa time.
Lucky them, huh? So do elephants often have twins?
It's in
Not
about same
Asian
ratio as us. It's about a 1 in 1,000 chance, but it works out to the same as humans, the ratio of twins to single borns.
Yeah.
So we noticed that some of the elephants had 4 toes and some had 5 toes. You guys know the reason why elephants have different toe counts? Any reason evolutionarily?
Eddie?
The Asian elephant has more toes than the African elephant. Typically 4 or 5 in the front and about 4 in the hind legs. The African elephant, if I'm right, Richard, has about 3 toes, right, in the hind legs?
Yeah, 4 and 3.
Right.
Yeah,
there's no particular reason that I can ascribe to that. But yeah, that's how it is. Like in many dogs, you'll have dew claws in the hind legs sometimes. It's just a chance.
Yeah, if we look at the front foot of an elephant, is always bigger than the back foot because there's more weight around the head and the shoulders to carry. So there just probably was more space for the toenails to be, because that other toe itself will be probably rudimentary inside. A lot of animals still have and retain their 5 toes, much like a horse still has 5 toes, even though it's got 1 hoof, still has all the remnant toes sticking out and around.
Fascinating, fascinating. So tell me about the pictures. Are these your pictures, gentlemen, or where do they come from? And we have one of our guests would love to buy a book of them. So any ideas?
Can you repeat your question, Rob? I'm having a connection.
No problem. So the question, all of the images for the most part are mine and Eddie's photos, and we pride ourselves on beautiful imagery and sharing them around the world. And possibly, Aditya, you and I need to make a nice elephant book, apparently, just showing off the beauty of these creatures.
You should. That's actually.
I think you should think about it, because you have been getting a lot of praise from our guests about really the beauty of your photography. And I know that they can come and learn from you guys on trips as well. So that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all the time we have left for questions today. So I'd like to throw it back to you guys and see if you have any closing comments for our guests today.
Thanks so much for watching, all of you, and spending time with us. Just remember to give NatHab a call and book one of these amazing trips. COVID's finally seeing the light today, and hopefully we can get through it. But at the moment, these elephants are all dying for your presence, and we would love to host you. Thank you, NatHab. Thank you, Rob, for hosting us. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Richard, Aditya, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us today. And I'd like to thank everybody else who tuned in. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.